Hello and welcome to another painting. This time I will be showing you the process of how I create a sketch and further the pencil sketch and lastly the line art before showing you the separate steps of the finished painting, or like the lead up to that painting. I thought I would show you this time from a different starting point, where with the previous video I showed the tacky drenched cloth video. I showed you how I work with an already existing sketch and how I line and color and shade and so on. Where this time I start with only the posture sketch in place, and I'll show you how I add in the details and the actual sketch of the painting that will later be lined and colored. As you can see, I already have a sketch in place. This is what I like to call the posture sketch, where it's just about the posture. It's just about which way is my character facing, which way are they pointing their legs, their hands, whatever. And this second pass is to flesh out the actual bodies of those characters, where you can see I'm adding muscle definition and bone structure in some places. I know very well that this will all be covered up by clothes later on, but I like to have these details in there, just for the sake of making clothes look more realistic in how they lay over a character's body, where, for example, tight-fitting clothes would show muscle tone underneath, or as you can see with that bent knee, you would still see the kneecap through the fabric, where it's like stretched taut over the knee. I'm already sketching in the shoes simply because I don't really see the point in drawing feet when I already know that there will be shoes covering them. I sort of don't like drawing feet. Well, sideways feet are okay, but like feet from the front, ugh, no. But in this case, I already know that he will be wearing shoes, and I already have a pretty good idea of what these shoes will be looking like, so I can sketch them in first. Whereas with his clothes, I'm not entirely sure how I want to dress him yet, so I decided to leave those details out for now. Yeah. I am deciding also on the posture of the other leg, which was kind of vague before. To give you an explanation for like my sometimes a bit wonky postures, I don't actually have references. Whenever I draw like from the top of my head, just do it. I don't really look for references when it comes to poses and stuff. Mostly because I'm just really bad at copying things, or like references don't really do much for me where I have to recreate something. So I typically don't use that. Yeah. And also because I wouldn't want to like be accused of stealing another person's posture, if that makes sense, or like I mean, yeah, I know there's references and stock photos that you can just use and stuff, but I like to do my own work and do my own thing with that. So yeah, that's just my preference. If references help you, by all means use them. It's just not for me. Yeah, it's not much I can say here. For example, with moving on to the hand, at some point I just learned to draw hands a certain way, and that's how I've been doing it ever since. I am fully aware of how many people out there who just hate drawing hands, and I absolutely feel you there. Hands are sometimes really a pain in the ass to draw, but uh, I guess at some point you just learn a method and then you just use it over and over, and I know my hands aren't perfect, but it's good enough for now. Moving on to the other face of the other character, this is Mena. You can see I rotated the canvas so that her face is upright while I draw it. I find it easier to draw a face when it's like upright as opposed to drawing it at an angle or something, simply because the proportions just come out nicer this way. I mean, this isn't perfect yet either. I mean, it's not meant to be. This is just the second phase of sketching. But generally, I find it easier to draw faces when they're upright. I mean, I see it in other people's drawings sometimes where I can tell that they did not rotate their canvas or their paper while drawing a face, where from one angle it sort of looks okay, but the moment you look at it from a different angle, it just falls apart and it looks really ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, our brains evolved to see faces right side up as opposed to like somehow turned on its side or whatever. So obviously it would be easier for our brains to recreate a face that is right side up as opposed to like upside down or something like that. So just bear that in mind when you, for example, draw a person laying down or like tilting their head to some angle or something like that. You can see Mena is slouching, and this is not because I'm because I don't understand what normal posture looks like. This is a character moment. This is visual storytelling here because she's feeling guilty as hell and she's kind of unsure what to do or how to behave right now, so that's why she is so she's slouching so much, and that's what her posture is about. That's what it's telling you right now. I mean, it's part of a story. If you know the story, you'll probably be able to see it easier. Shout out to the few people who have read Belly Kitty and the other Thorny Dawn stories. I doubt any of you are here. If there are, I would probably freak out. But yeah, as I said, this is a character moment. This is also why these characters look the way they do. I designed them to look like this. They are my characters. Mena and Mihail are the protagonists of Belly Kitty. It's, as I said, a story that I wrote. If it were a story from somebody else, or if it were somebody else's characters, I would probably approach this whole process a bit differently, where I would be using references to see what the characters look like, just so I would make them accurate. But in this case, the only references that exist are those that I made, so there's that. This was a mistake. I sort of didn't logic that one, where I tried to shorten Mena's forearm and lengthen Mihail's. You need to do that separately, 10. thank you for realizing that now. But yeah, I make mistakes too, and I kept it in there for the sake of honesty, because we all make mistakes sometimes, so there's that. This is a feature of ArtRage, the program that I'm using, that I really like, where the selecting lasso tool is very useful and very easy to use, which is why I use it a lot. Oh, well, not a lot, but like in cases like these where I need to adjust a single detail in a sketch, I very much like to use it. And no, I'm not sponsored by ArtRage or anything like that. I just really like this program, even though it has a bunch of flaws that I could make a whole video of its own about all the flaws and like the problems that I see with it, but that's not the point right now. Then, as you can see, I'm moving on to the pencil sketch right now. It probably is worth mentioning that at this point in the process, I had intended to use the pencil sketch as the final line art, which is why I put so much detail in there. Usually I would probably not bother, but as I said, this time I had intended to use it as the final product, which then I changed my mind about that. Yeah, what can I say? Adding in details that I couldn't add with the previous brush, adding in mistakes too. Mihail's second piercing isn't that high up. As you can see, this is a reference that I made. This is the first drawing of Mihail that ever existed. As you can see, the second piercing is a bit lower, so I'm just going to fix that real quick. Now it's on the right place, and there's that. This is for the sake of character continuity. I mean, I guess nobody would really care, because nobody really knows this character, aside from the few readers of Belly Kitty and the other Thorny Dawn character stories and stuff. But who is that? Like, none of you, right? Nobody reads this. In any case, I will link the stories down in the description, so if anyone ever cares to read them, feel free to do so. But yeah, I just like my characters to look the same throughout their stories and stuff. Like, obviously not clothes and stuff, or hair colors or hair cuts. Stuff that can change obviously might change. I mean, I have a bunch of characters who change a lot throughout their stories, where, like, for example, the twins cut their hair at some point. Also, the twins are some other characters of mine, don't mind them. Maybe they will be on this channel at some point, maybe, who knows. But thus far, there's nothing I could show you. But yeah, they look the same, like their facial features, aside from aging. And the same goes for, like, the other characters of my stories. I just think it would be unreasonable to have them change all of a sudden. If I could just look up how they look, or like how their faces were meant to look, or how I designed them to look, it just seems like a sloppy mistake, so I try to avoid that. So that's that. I'm sorry for my ramblings. I'm improvising, and this is actually the fourth attempt or the fifth attempt of doing a voiceover. I was interrupted the previous times, which is really infuriating. But okay, this time I think this will work. This will work out. If you hear this, it worked out. Yeah, at this point, as you can see, my sketching became really sloppy, which is because at this point I had decided to do an even better line art with the ink pen after all. So I just, at this point, I was just roughly sketching in the way the folds would fall, and the way, like, the very basic, lines would, how that would look. About Mena, what I would like to mention, I know she looks a bit strange or like a bit unusual, like not traditionally beautiful, let's put it like that, but that was intentional. I wanted her to have a bit of an unusual kind of beauty. She's very pale, or like pretty pale, and she has red hair and green eyes. And no, I'm not saying she lacks a soul. She's a perfectly normal human, people. But the idea is that she kind of has a bit of like Elizabethan beauty, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? The Queen Elizabeth with her very pale skin and the red hair. She kind of resembles that, but like in a modern kind of way, if that makes any sense. Excuse me, in my throat. Yeah, adding in some details for the hands. Adding in the ropes for the bondage on Mena. This is all part of the story. I'm not trying to get you to read the story. I mean, if you do, I would be overjoyed, but don't worry, you don't have to read it. But this is an illustration for when Mena and Mihail meet for the first time, and yeah, because it is a scene from the story, and it is a particular scene, I depict it the way I do, because in the story it says that she is still wearing bondage, so that's why I put it there. Something that I didn't mention previously, but you might notice, is the way that Mena's thigh sort of bulges out from where the bench sort of presses into her leg. This is just a little way to make her look more three-dimensional and more realistic, because she's not a doll. She's not made of plastic. Her flesh and skin will react and interact with whatever surface she's sitting upon, or like, you know what I mean when I say that. I hope, yeah, little mistakes there, correcting stuff. This is the sketching stuff, so here you can just make mistakes all over the place, it's all fine. That's what I like about this stage, where I can already see the details take shape, but obviously it is not perfect, it's nowhere near done. I took a break at this point, which is why this is a little step in between, where we can see how far we got with this. But yeah, moving on. Mihail has glasses, and I sketched those in real quick. The thing about glasses, I see in many drawings or in manga and anime, I see how the side of the glasses is sort of made transparent, which is so that the side of the glasses don't hide the eyes. I mean, I totally get it. You want the character's eyes to be visible, but I just personally think it looks really weird, because glasses are not see-through at that point. And in this case, I sort of wanted to give Mihail a bit of more, like a bit more mysterious appearance, where the glasses obstructing the view of his eye sort of hammers that home, where you can't really see the expression in his eye, so that just adds a bit of mystery there. I'm sketching in the bench that Mena is sitting on. You see with this drawing, I'm not really worrying so much about the background. Honestly, if you've seen any of my other paintings, I almost never really worry about the background. Honestly, I don't think it is necessary. Um, as I said, my drawings exist as illustrations. They are not meant to really stand on their own, to be honest. So I don't see the reason why I would worry so much about a background that nobody even mentions, or like that nobody even cares about. This is just to ground the characters in some form of reality where it's like, oh no, they're not just hovering in space, this is actually a scene that's taking place. But yeah, this is absolutely enough to convey the message of they are in a room, they are talking to each other. So I don't think I need more details than that. And now we are finally moving on to the actual line art, where you can see I chose the ink pen, and I'm doing the actual line art now. What can I say about that? Well, I'm just trying to make it look clean and tidy. It's really nothing that fancy. I would just say, whatever program you're using, try to use it to the best effect that you can, if that makes any sense. Like, with ArtRage, for example, there is the stabilizing effect, or you can use a stabilizer to make sure that the lines are prettier and straighter, which is very, very helpful when you're trying to draw a straight line. Like, for example, the side of the glasses, I wanted that to be very straight, so I used a stabilizer there. Whereas with the scars, for example, I want them to be a bit rugged and a bit not so clean looking. So, yeah. It's also worth mentioning, if you ever use ArtRage and you see the stabilizer, it goes very far with stabilizing. You can pretty much draw a curved line and have it look pretty straight at the end. And fun story, when I first started using ArtRage, I kind of went overboard with that, where I was like, oh wow, I can now draw fully straight lines and it's beautiful, and oh my gosh, this is amazing. No, it's not. It's not good enough. It all has its application. It all is useful for something, but not everything. So stabilizing tools like that, for example, use it sparingly. Use it where it belongs. Like this hair, for example, Mihail has pretty smooth hair. If I were drawing a character with curls, for example, the stabilizing tool would totally screw that up. So it would make more sense to lower the stabilization percentage and draw it with like more of a freehand style, where the curls would just fall naturally and be a bit more chaotic. There you can see the waves and the curves of Mihail's hair. I like his hair to be a bit, it's wavy, but it's not really curvy. Curvy, what the hell am I saying? Sorry. Curly. I just think it adds more dynamic to his character design, to have that hair be a bit unruly and a bit wild. Also, within the context of this illustration, it makes sense that his hair would be a bit messy. Basically, this scene happens at the end of a BDSM themed party, so to speak. So who knows what what Mihail has been up to until now. Um, so who knows who's been fluffing up his hair? Who knows who's been touching him until now? We know. Um, so I think it is nice to see a bit of like a story happening in his hair where it's not pristine and perfectly combed, and yeah. Drawing hair, by the way, is a bit tedious, but also I enjoy it. It is something that has very nice flowing curvy lines, and it's really, I don't know, I just like it for some reason. I mean, as I said, it is tedious. Um, because it's just a lot. Okay, sure, if you have a short-haired character, it wouldn't be that much. Um, but when you have open and flowing hair like that, it can be a bit tedious. But it's also a very nice process. I think I enjoy it. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but well, whatever. Moving on to the clothes. This is where it pays off that I already sketched in the folds and wrinkles in the clothes previously in the pencil sketch. So basically this is just re-outlining and like tidying up what I already did. I don't really think I have any advice on how to do wrinkles in clothes. I honestly just, I looked at clothes and I drew that. That is pretty much the whole story of how I learned actually to draw anything. I look at stuff and I learn how to draw that stuff. That is pretty much it. I mean, my style is very obviously inspired by like manga style, but I try to keep it somewhat realistic, where I'm like not going the full shoujo or like the stylized route. I try to ground my characters in some form of reality, but I'm obviously aware that this is nowhere near realistic. I would say it makes it a bit harder to really judge my style, which is sometimes a bit of a problem where I would love to be able to like fully critique my own art, or like have people critique my art by comparing it to pre-existing material. But whenever you look at it as a manga drawing, you go, well, it is not very stylized, and the shading style isn't exactly typical for manga. But then you go, okay, it's sort of realistic, but it's not really realistic either, so it's a bit hard to judge. And sorry, I'm rambling on about this. It's just a bit of an insecurity of mine, so to speak. Yeah, whatever. It's just that we can only judge things by comparing them to what we already know, and yeah, people know what a realistic style looks like. People know what or like some people know what anime style looks like, and my style fits neither, so in both cases you would consider it a failure. But well, that's that. Now we move on to the ropes that are tied around Mena, and I could have added in a bit more detail with that, I guess. Since this scene was meant to be pretty dark, like the lighting overall at the end would be pretty dark, I figured you wouldn't really see it anyway, so I didn't bother with that really. If it were a scene with more light, or like if the ropes had been the focal point, I probably would have added all the detail in there where you could see like the strands that were like tied together or like curled up together. I don't know how to say this, but you get what I mean. You would see the separate strands of rope actually flowing together, if that makes more sense. But as I said, since this is not really the focal point of this scene and you wouldn't see it anyways, I decided not to do it. My painting style pretty much is a bit of, if you want to say it so like that, it's about efficiency, where I try to not freak out over like the smallest minute details where no one's going to notice them anyways. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I add in details where I'm pretty certain that no one is ever going to notice them, where I'm like, but look, there's like this little strand of hair that's special, notice it please, and no, and everyone is just like, what are you talking about? I don't see it. But in this case, I couldn't be bothered really. If you look at the time, it was almost 1 a.m. So I was already pretty tired at this point. I was running out of patience, in all honesty. But I still tried to do as good of a job as possible, so yeah. You can see how Mihail's shirt is a bit loose fitting and how it's bunched up around his stomach, his hip, his waist, where he's like bent over a little. Then his trousers, and you can see they are somewhat loose fitting, but they stretch over the knee a little bit, where you can see that the fabric is pretty taut there, where it's a bit more loose fitting on the rest of his body, or on the rest of his leg. That's what these lines signify, that the fabric is pulled taut over the knee, as opposed to like here, for example, with all kind of compressed and folding in on itself. I should probably mention at this point that I consider myself pretty bad when it comes to drawing shoes, or guy shoes. I'm okay at drawing girl shoes, but this is just, let's not even try talking about those shoes, okay? It was late, okay? It's like 1 a.m. at this point, when I'm drawing this, so cut me some slack. And also, it's the same as with the other details, where it's about efficiency. It's not really the focal point of this drawing. Same with that second arm. It's just a line to show that yes, there is a second arm. It exists. So this is the final line art. This is where I stopped it then, and like I added in the lines for the background later. The first pass at shading, or at creating a light source, then the coloring, You can see I added freckles and a bit of fluctuation to Mena's skin there. Then I added her makeup and the shading and highlighting, and yeah, that is the final painting. That is how it came out. I'm still not 100% happy with it, but hey, I have an illustration for Belly Kitty. Go read my story. Actually, if you don't want to read it, don't do it. But yeah, that's that. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and thank you for watching. I hope I'll see you, or you'll see me, or you'll see my art next time. Until then, have a nice day. Bye.